Ladies and gentlemen, today on the program, I am most delighted to welcome back our old friend Alex Petrovich, better known to most of you as Yeti Bones of Gypsy Chief Goliath, among many other rock and roll bands. Last time we had Al on the show, he was in the midst of a personal transformation. Okay, this is a few years ago. He was working on getting himself in shape, working on getting his focus together, working on entering his 40s at peak physical, mental, personal, creative power. And he has done that, all right? And since then, I have watched with great fascination as this transformation has revealed itself to the world. And he has turned himself into an actor. He has had roles in several prominent productions, including the recently released film Switched at Death. It's been really incredible, really inspiring to watch this dude who was doing so well in music, and he's written a book that's been released, doing all of these creative things, but beginning to pour himself into this new passion, or more accurately, rediscover an old passion, which is one of the things we're going to get to talking about on this episode. We're talking about how childhood informs adulthood. We're talking about meditation. We're talking about betting on yourself, really doubling down on your own instincts, on your own vision, pushing through fear, challenging these notions that a lot of us are saddled by about what is possible and what is not possible in your life. It's a supremely inspiring conversation with a supremely inspiring cat, man. Really delighted to bring this to you. And before we get to it, I will just remind you very quickly that there is a Patreon page for this podcast. If you enjoy this episode, if you enjoy the other episodes, if you are encouraged, inspired, educated, motivated, like learning things, like just having a friendly voice in your ears once a week, please do consider supporting on Patreon. It is patreon.com/JohnHuffPodcast. If not, that's cool. Share, like, ratings, reviews. Tell your friends, kids. If you like what we're doing here, please, as King X said, just go tell somebody. I'm going to stop telling you right now because I want to get to this episode. Really great chat with Yeti Bones / Alex Petrovich. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll get to it on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. I don't even know where to start here. I mean, the last time we talked, you were in the midst of a personal reinvention. That's going back a few years. Yeah. And I've watched this happen with great fascination. And so normally in a circumstance like this, I would have a bunch of questions that I could throw at you, and I do. But really, I have just watched this reinvention over the past few years, and I'm hoping that you'll just tell us about it, because you're an actor now, and everything has changed so radically, and you are this enormously positive presence online, and I mean, I'm fascinated by personal transformation. I'm in the midst of it myself, and I'm hoping you'll just tell us about the process you've gone through over the past few years, if that's not too open-ended a starting point.
No, I think it definitely can come out pretty organic, I think, because one thing led to another. I'm a firm believer that my diet and lifestyle change contributed to a lot of clarity in my thinking, and kind of ditching some old habits for new ones helped me put some things in place, that were basically going to be something that I was going to live by. And a big part of that was writing my book. It wasn't much of a memoir as it was more of just I guess it's a music industry book described but disguised as a self-help book that made me it was my life in the Canadian music industry and beyond. So with that, I started doing a lot of self-reflection and started realizing a lot of, appropriately titled, it was called The Mistakes I've Made.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that this book made me reflect on was just that, was a lot of the it wasn't so much the successes that I'd gained. It was the lessons learned were far more important to me. And if that can help other people, great. But at the end of the day, it was a way for me to, I guess, audit myself and take stock in what roads I had chosen to go down and how things could have been different. And one of the biggest things I realized was, family meant a lot, and just life in general was far more interesting to me without taking music so seriously and maybe kind of going somewhere else with it, into a different direction. And as I started doing this whole lifestyle change, losing 125 pounds and becoming a certified nutritionist and coaching people around the world, I wrote this book during COVID. And I'd been toying around with the idea for years before that, but I think it was when COVID really hit, was when that's when I sat down and had nothing else to do. So I decided to do that. I had a publishing deal on the table prior to that. And then when COVID hit, it was done. So I had to self-publish and ended up selling a lot of copies of it. So it was somewhat of a way that I could supplement an income stream. And at that time, too, we had just completed a Gypsy Chief Goliath record that went to Ripple Music out of California. And that, to me, was one of the most prominent record labels we could have ever been on. I could have died tomorrow and been happy. And so they put that out for us. Then the band kind of disbanded. And, I had, during that time, during COVID, I had started a band called Age of Wolves. And that became, I shut that down as well. Personally, it was no longer serving me in the way that I needed it to, or in the way that I wanted music to. It was a very difficult go, as during that time. So it was, so it became one of those things. And then I ran into a friend, an old friend from Toronto. We ran into each other at the Alice Cooper show, and we started talking. We started a new project called Riffs of Retribution.
Great name, by the way.
Oh yeah, cool. That was Trig's idea. He had this idea toying around for, and we all just kind of been like, we all had the same kind of issues musically and just frustration wise with life at that time. So, we're doing that on the side. And I guess, through all this time, one of the biggest things for me was my wife found transcendental meditation. And so she started doing courses for this, going to London and training with somebody. And through that, she was also practicing Wim Hof, the breath work and cold exposure. But she took it even further. She's going to Spain in October, and she's going to be one of the very few in Canada that are like fully certified Wim Hof instructors.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been practicing that stuff for the last several months. And personally, I started doing a lot of meditation, half hour to an hour a day, twice a day, trying to at least. And it's one of these things where my mind is as clear as can be these days. And my mood is even keeled, and music no longer does what it used to do to me. And, over these past couple of years, I should say, I started to just, through that book, through that writing, I started to really take stock in my life and figure out what it is that I want to do. For a long time, I felt I was, this circle trying to be fit into a square peg, or a circle piece being fit into into this box. And, constantly just always felt like, in reality, everybody needs to work. Everybody needs to make money. Everybody needs to make a sustainable income and some kind of lifestyle they have to build. But, for me, I always felt like I was hustling and grinding all the time. Even when I was at a job, I was always willing to leave the job just to do the creative side. So I decided to double down on the creative and started to audition more and more for voiceover work. And the voiceover work started to pan out. I started to do some really cool stuff. I did a commercial for JJ Watt, the football player. I did audio dialogue replacement for Judd Nelson, the actor.
Wow.
And all of these things started to roll into other opportunities. And then I found an agent and started to audition for bigger roles on screen, which became, coincidentally enough, it was no voice. It was just docudrama reenactment stuff, so I was playing the farmer, I was playing the detective, or I was, whatever. And then from there, that started to kind of roll into actual speaking roles. And then from speaking roles, it started to like get into lead and principal characters. And then I was doing like 5-minute monologues and, just insane stuff. So, So, I mean, I'd always wanted to perform. I'd always wanted to be an actor when I was younger. Before that, it was probably a professional basketball player. And before that, I was a professional wrestler. And so, I mean, it was always something about performance that like, or is on a higher level, working on a higher level. And the acting bug hit me really, really hard. And, I had gotten that American Express card commercial. And then I did a detective thing for called Unexpected Killer for NBC. And those things just marveled me. I love the idea of working in the creative field and someone else dealing with the business side. Right. Whereas I was dealing with both. And when things weren't working, the insanity started to hit me. I'd just be hitting myself against the wall, just expecting it to break without realizing that there's a better way, there's an easier way. And sometimes, other people around you have to kind of rise up to your level and help you out. And when that doesn't happen, you feel like it's your fault and you feel like you're doing something wrong and just all of these emotions and just, at the end of the day, it's with acting, if it doesn't work out, it's on me. And each day I try to do something that helps me move forward in that. So
there's so much in there to chew on. This decision to double down on the creative side, it's really, really courageous. And I think a lot of people would love to do that. And the practical side of life comes into it. It requires a certain amount of A, confidence in yourself, and B, faith that somehow this is going to work out if you do it. What do you think about that?
Yeah. There was always a chance that it wasn't going to, but, and on a daily basis, I don't know if it is, you know what I mean? It's like, I broke it down to my wife and we kind of wrote out a flow chart and literally explained like, how much do we need to survive? How much do we need for the kids? How much do we need for us? And what's practical? How do we supplement and offset this stuff? And we just started to break it down like a science. And at the end of the day, we only needed half of what I was making at my full-time job, and if that was to be the case, then I would be more present in family matters, being there to pick up my kids and drop them off to school and stuff. So eliminating daycare and certain other income out, right. As opposed to, so these were other things that we were putting a value on and saying, well, if we can do this and if I can do that, then I can do that. I can try and make a go of it. Now, selling the albums and, setting up an income stream to sell the book and work on the next book, which I'm working on with her. And we're kind of, because we've been both in tandem, we've been both building parallel lifestyle changes, and so we want to do something together with the book, a book idea. We talk about lifestyle changes, and then from like a male perspective, and then from the female perspective of the same idea, and just kind of jiving back and forth with it. And so with the acting and the voiceover work, I treated it like it was a career, and I had a lot of experience in sales and finance, and I know that the volatility of those industries are crazy, crazy roller coaster. And I didn't find any difference with acting or music for that matter. The only difference was that music, you work at night, and and you like sleep during the day. So, but if you can make it work, you do it to the high heavens, and just make sure that you don't fall flat on your face. And if you double down and bet on yourself, and you truly believe in yourself, there really shouldn't be a reason that you will fall flat. You will fall flat every once in a while, but when you get up and you keep going, that's where all those sayings and everything really, really do mean something, because it really isn't the end of the world if something doesn't come in today. It's just make sure that you're doing everything you can for yourself to better yourself personally, so that you are ready when the opportunity does arise, and then you seize it. So yeah, we were collectively trying to figure out how we're going to make this thing work, and with the right support. And I mean, that's all it is I never felt like I had like the a true support system when I was playing music. It was kind of like it was working the 9 to 5, and then Alex is going to go play his gig or go out for a tour, and then hopefully he doesn't get fired when he gets back from from his job.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you can always find another job. It's I never put a lot of stock into the career, because the career was never what I wanted to actually do. The true career is where I'm at now. So, and it's taken me this long to get there, which is fine. It's that overnight success takes 10 years,
Like 10 years,
or more. So that's kind of where it's at. It's like I've always had this idea to do this. I just never knew how I would get started. And when things push comes to shove, I bet on myself, and it worked.
That is a rare thing, man, and good for you. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to have you on at this point is because so many people, we have this mindset that says, the starving artist myth and the romance of that. And a lot of people just don't believe it's possible, right? And they don't even think it's an option to bet on themselves, to follow a career path or a dream or whatever. Right. And I find myself in that position all the time. I'm, as everybody who listens to me knows, my 50th birthday is in a couple weeks. It's imminent. Yeah. That is a point in time at which you begin to reflect on things, and you sort of look around and say, okay, how have we done? How are we doing? Where's it going? And most people, and I have that temptation too, is to just almost abandon the idea of being successful as a creative, and go back to the safe route, which I'm, by the way, finding it difficult to get back to full-time work and whatever. And so I think people need examples, and people need the inspiration to say, hey, look, Yeti's doing it. Look at this shift he's made in his creative life, and he's doing it. What about self-belief? I mean, it's such an important thing. Have you always had that, or is that something you've had to cultivate?
Definitely cultivate. Yeah, I didn't have that. Growing up, a lot of low self-esteem, a lot of confidence issues, a lot of, believing that I wasn't enough, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't this, I wasn't that. Um, seeing other people and comparing myself to them, putting myself in their shoes and trying to imagine what it would be like. And it was really rough. It was tough. But I think at the end of the day, I to go back to meditation, a lot of that stuff, clearing all the gunk that's in your mind and all the thoughts, all these, I read somewhere that, we all have 60,000 thoughts on a daily basis. And 90% of those 60,000 are the same thoughts you thought yesterday.
Sure.
And the day before that, and the year after that, and the year before that, and going back for as long as you can. So when people say folks can't change, they're half correct, especially if you keep thinking those same thoughts over and over again. It's impossible to change. You can't change. But if you can change 5% of your thoughts to something new and stop ruminating about the past, stop thinking about the future so hard, and just focus on the moment, the present moment, change can happen, and change for the better can happen in this moment. It cannot happen tomorrow, and it can't happen yesterday. It has to happen in this moment when you're changing, when you're thinking different thoughts. And I started to eliminate a lot of the negative self-talk. One of the big motivators for me was when I realized that all that limiting beliefs and self-talk that we talk to ourselves about, and, how would you talk to a 5-year-old child? Would you talk to him with the same negative thoughts, or the negative phrasings and stuff? And just, if you imagine your inner child being like beaten down and abused that way verbally by yourself, it's impossible to get anything done. But with a little bit of positive reinforcement and just changing your thought process on the actual process itself, you can find a way to get there. And that was a big thing for me. And then understanding that, most of us, we live in like a survival mode all the time, trying to make enough money, trying to survive, trying to pay the rent, trying to do this, trying to do that. And you get so worked up and so caught up in all of this survival that you forget that, the only time anything can ever change is when you're in creation mode, when you're creating, and so, we're all creatives. I think human beings are just born to be creative. But we get put in these conditional societal boxes where, we get this identity and we're told that this is what we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives. And then you just grow to believe it. But the people that told you that were humans with bad advice as well, and everybody just gets a series of bad advice passed down to them, and they get pushed into this box. And whether you can make it or not is up to you at that point. But you may never have been built for that. You may never have been meant to do that. And so here you are wondering what's wrong with you because you can't work a 9 to 5 like the guy next to you or the woman next to you or, the person next to you. And they can. And so you think that they're just built differently and that they're built for this. And you start thinking like, well, what am I built for? What was I supposed to do? And then deep down what you were supposed to do, but you've ignored it your entire life. I mean, you've known it since you were a child, but it's just something that, was beaten out of you. This belief system was beaten out of you early on, by people who didn't really know what the hell they were talking about in the first place. And so then you follow those rules and you follow those roads and you don't end up getting there, or you do, one way or another. But it's for me, the creative side was much more in volume terms. It was much louder than, the survival. I never thought about needing to make enough money. I never thought about needing to pay the rent. It would just always get paid when I put all my forces into creative, but it's an incredible risk reward it's how much are you willing to lose before you make it? How much are you willing to lose before you turn it around? And some people, it's the same thing with investments. You ask somebody, well, how much money would, if I was to invest this money, into these mutual funds, like, are you okay with losing $5,000 to $7,000 in a year? Well, no, I'm not. So, okay, so then we'll move it into a little more safer funds, but if somebody says, yeah, put it all in the high risk, I don't care, because I know that the markets are going to correct themselves eventually and things are going to skyrocket, and I'll lose early on, but I'll make on the long term, on the long end, I'll make 10 times. So that's just kind of how I always looked at things. When you believe in yourself and you bet on yourself, you're going to make it. You will, you're going to find a way. And you just can't be as blind thinking that, well, if I'm going to keep doing this for how long and nothing's happened. I mean, unless you're actually working on it, I don't see how it can't happen. You just need to put your nose to the grindstone. You always have to keep working towards it. It's not like I close my eyes and I just envision what I want out of life, and then all of a sudden, I Dream of Jeannie, just squeeze your nose or whatever, or just do the thing, and then it appears. I actually physically walk through those doors, and I physically go. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in Windsor that drives to Toronto more than I do, for work. It's insane. And in a span of 2 weeks, I was in Toronto 3 times, Ancaster once, and Hamilton twice. So, and then in London as well. And so it's a crazy life, but it's something that really, really makes me happy. And I think that that's first and foremost, that's most important, because, everything sounds so cliche that we're talking about, but I'm realizing that it's that for a reason. It's cliche for a reason, because it's happened. And those things, they're meant to inspire people, and they're meant to make you understand that, like, working for somebody else is okay. That's great. If that's how you want to live your life, for me personally, it was very difficult. It was, I wasn't able to sleep at night. I wasn't able to look myself in the mirror. I wasn't able to fully commit to who I am, truly. So now that I get to do what I want to do, stuff seems to be working out for me, and I couldn't be happier.
You feel it inside when you're not pursuing what it is you really want or you were meant to do. And even worse is when you are in that pursuit and it doesn't seem to be working. And that creates all this tension. And it's so interesting when you talk about the limiting beliefs and being able to recognize them, because so many people aren't aware of the 90% of the thoughts that they repeat every day. We have this weird celebration of being busy all the time.
Yeah.
And like this, some sort of badge of honor that I'm so busy, and people don't take the time to stop and really inquire into the thoughts that run through their head all the time. That this is what mindfulness is, right? And obviously meditation's probably been a huge factor in your own discovery of your thoughts. And I'm a meditator myself. I'm not good at it. And I'm not great at controlling the thoughts or allowing the thoughts. Like, I'm just not great at the meditation, but it's such an important thing to stop and really think about what you're thinking and the thoughts that go into it. And we live in this culture that also, as I said, has this myth of the starving artist. And people of my age, you're a little bit younger than me, but people of my age grew up with parents whose parents grew up in the Depression.
Yeah.
So their frame of reference for how the world is much different than how it actually is now, And so you get a stable job and you get a house and money is hard to come by and life is hard. And this is the myth and this is the ethos that you just work yourself into the grave. And it's very easy to adopt those beliefs because that's what you're taught from a kid.
That's it.
And I've always been a person who did not fit easily into boxes either, and I still don't.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle at times because I have the same limiting beliefs. I have the same problems with self-belief that I'm still working through right now. And I've met people who are living successful creative lives like at the highest level as you have. For the most part, they're just folks. There's not some magic here.
No, exactly.
Right? It's a combination of belief and courage and opportunity and being ready when the moment comes. And I think we need to disband this myth of genius and that kind of thing. For the most part, it's just folks who took a chance.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Fear and resistance is, I mean, it's at the helm of a lot of people's reasons for why they can't do something. And, sometimes the mind really can't accept the unknown. It would rather sit in the crap, knowing what's the outcome. I don't mind going to a job that I hate because I know that nobody's going to die and the building's not going to set on fire and whatever. And I'm going to live my life doing that for the rest of my life, even though I absolutely hate it and I'm miserable. But to change and do something different, where the doors might actually open up and the opportunities that you've always been waiting for might actually occur, the body just doesn't know what to do with that. That's information that it just doesn't understand. And until you walk through those doors and you repeatedly and you keep figuring out that fear is just a boogeyman that keeps you from attaining your dreams. And that's it. I mean, there's, like you said, there really is there's no secret sauce on that. Like there's just hard work, but it's also, learning to believe in yourself and straight up overcoming fear and resistance, because those are going to be the things that are going to stop us from doing anything in this world.
Well, we're hardwired biologically to resist change because 200,000 years ago, change usually meant death. So we like things very predictable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's totally fine. And it's, I was going to say something really profound and I lost it somewhere along the way. Talk to me about the process of meditation for you. Because a lot of people have misconceptions about how meditation works and what it is. Tell me about your process.
I'll wake up in the morning and I'll put my headphones on and usually put some kind of binaural beats on or something like that, some sort of background music that is made and created to trigger a certain brainwave production. So it gets you in a more of like a slower pace. And when you're thinking not so much about, all these other things, because apparently when you think about too many things and when you start thinking about too much about the future and too much about the past, like your brain waves actually, they go into certain states, and you want your brain to be in a less of that kind of state and more of more of like a alpha or a beta, or there's theta, there's then there's gamma, and I guess when gamma is happening, there's some crazy stuff that's going on neurologically that's been proven, and a lot of these different states of brainwaves, when you get into this one where you're just in the present moment. So this is where I'm at. So with my practice every morning, it's just slow breathing. I start to think about my center. I start to think about this one dot. I close my eyes and this dot is there. And anytime I start to drift and start thinking about food I'm going to have later on, or something that I hate, or somebody that like irritates me, or something crazy like that, I bring it right back to that dot, and I just constantly just focus on that dot. No matter how many times, each day, it gets easier and easier and easier. Each time you do it, it gets easier to get back to that state. And when you get to that point, time stands still. So I can close my eyes and I'm just picturing this dot and I'm centered, and this music is just killing basically all the noise outside of me. And then when I open my eyes finally, it literally feels like I closed my eyes for 2 minutes, but 35 minutes has gone by. And it's the craziest phenomenon that can't be explained. It's just it shows that you're bending time and space during these moments, like these things that are happening. It's a travel. It's very strange, and I get out of it. And when I get up and actually walk around, I'm in this like this different mood, this different vibe of me. And the more I do it, the more that becomes me. That's that persona, or that those emotions. I don't get as stressed out. I'm not even starting my day with stress. It's I've lowered my or upped my threshold and ability to deal with stress because of it. And then I'll end the day that way too. If I'm in an audition, or if I'm about to go on set and have to produce a 5-minute monologue, and that's memorized and has to be acted out in this certain character, I'll do a meditation in the car, a nice 10-minute, just something to lower everything so that I don't get in there, and shaken. I cannot be shaken. At that point, I go in, I do my job, and I knock it out of the park. And my whole job is to leave everyone baffled, by the end. So, yeah, it's a strange thing, and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice. It's not easy, that's for sure. And it was not easy at all. I could only sit still for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes in total. When I was first starting, I couldn't sit longer than that, without opening my eyes, without like looking around, and without getting up and cracking a window, or without getting up and, grabbing my sweater, just finding something to do that wasn't sitting there. Like, but now I can do it easily every morning for about 30 minutes. And no lie, it feels like 5.
Yeah, it's I still struggle with it. And a lot of people, I think, become intimidated by meditation because they read somewhere, okay, start with 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And like, that's like, I'm going to start jogging, so we'll do a marathon, I guess, today. Start with a minute, start with 2 minutes, and I think there's also a temptation to turn the meditation process into some mystical thing, just like working as a creative. It's really not. It's just sit still quietly and focus on your breath, or dot in your head, or whatever. It's like, it's not mechanically all that difficult. It's fairly simple, but the actual doing of it can be an enormous challenge. Sometimes it's the opposite. You sit there for 2 minutes and it feels like 35, or you can, you know what I mean? Like
That's true.
It can be really, really demanding. And a lot of people, probably most people, live in this kind of state of hypervigilance. People live way more in their heads than in their hearts or in their intuition, right? Which is me all the time. I'm still working on that. So stopping and just slowing down, that's really intimidating to a lot of people. It's not how they're practiced. It's not their habit anymore. That can be really, really intimidating,
Waking up at 5 a.m. Religiously, and that being the first implement in my process, that was the biggest thing for me, and for a long time before the meditation component came in, it was getting up at 5 a.m. and trying to do as much as I possibly could before, everybody else got up and started their 9 to 5, so that I could have pride in the fact that, I had done so much before anyone had even gotten up, which was a great way to, I guess, build a certain ethic, a certain work ethic. But at the same time, it's using that time wisely and I'm reading and journaling and exercising at that time too, and meditating, which gets me, it gets me to that point where, this day-to-day grind, I'm able to do it all with a lot slower step. I don't have to multitask as much. I don't have to do, carry such a heavy load as I used to. The meditation component and, keeping your diet on point so that you don't slip. Because, when you're eating too much sugar and when you're eating too much processed foods, you're cloudy when you're thinking, and your clarity starts to go away because the inflammation is starting to kick in. Well, when that happens, you start to make bad decisions. You start to slip up on a daily basis. You start to have weird cravings in the middle of the day. You start to have these different, things. I mean, I remember telling a therapist this, and she's like, "I think you might have a eating disorder," and I was like, "Well, I guess we're done here." And I got up and I just walked away and I said, "Thanks for nothing," because it was like, that's not what this is. This is like, you're looking to treat me on such a surface level that, to me, that it's something so much deeper than just a food addiction or some weird, relationship with food. I believe we all have that, this weird relationship with food that's been passed down from generation to generation, thinking that like, celebrations and meals and all these things can bring us all together. And of course they can, but the people should be bringing us together, the connections between us, the energy between us, the vibrations that we all have in that room should be bringing us together, not the recipe or the food. Now for like, my grandma or something like that, God rest her soul, like, that would be her way, right? Like the food, but like, and which is great, but
that's an act of love, right? Preparing
absolutely.
food is an act of service.
And I respect that to the highest degree. It's just the whole idea of having to shovel it down so that you can go about your day and keep working and keep pushing forward, making sure that, we're all doing what we need to be doing, because, somewhere down the line, this is what's expected of us. And there's no one process, there's no one process to get us to the end. We're all going to get there eventually. And, and how we get there is going to be our business.
What I was going to ask you before that I forgot about, we had talked about, knowing from being a child, knowing what it is you wanted to do or are meant to do or whatever. How do we tap into that? This knowing that we've suppressed about who we are, what we want to be, what we want to do.
Yeah, I think that I had forgotten about all that stuff a long time ago, and really, really, really forgotten what it was like to be a kid, forgotten how to play, and then it wasn't until I started to just fall back in love with comic books and collections and stuff, like collectibles, old wrestling figures and stuff like that, old toys. I began to like recollect all my old childhood treasures, and I was finding such joy in that, and just staring at them. And then I started getting like these weird flashbacks from when I was a kid, and then I started getting these weird complexities, these complexes that were starting to develop, because I remember my parents always saying, when are you going to grow up? When are you going to grow up? When are you going to grow up? Let this stuff go. And then, somebody comes over and they're like, "Oh, you're that guy who collected all that stuff since you were a kid, eh?" And like, I'm like, "No, actually, I'm the guy who was forced to sell that stuff at yard sales every year, to make room for new stuff that never actually came in, as I was getting older, like, my parents were stopping to buy me toys, and it was kind of sad, and so I found myself in this state where I'm just, I'm disappointed. I was an only child, and I let that kid go, for too long, and was convinced that in music I was taking myself way too seriously. I had this ego and this narcissistic approach to it all, and just everything kind of led me back to, well, if I had that still, if I had that sense of play and had that kid still in me, I'd be way different. I'd be approaching everything differently, and I would be approaching everything with like a little more wonder and a little more joy and a little more magic, and it wasn't so fixated on the, it has to be this way or it's not going to work. I think you can't forget to play because once I started kind of reverting back to my old self, and I'm talking about like my childhood self, even the memorization of lines and dialogue, so it started becoming way easier for me.
Hmm.
I would be doing, these productions, and between takes, like one of the other actors are like, "How do you remember all those lines?" And I was like, honestly, like I keep reading them over, I cover them up, I try to memorize them, and then I look at them and I just keep trying to visualize. I remember when I was a kid, like I could memorize minutes and minutes and minutes of like a speech or something. And so I was just always tapping into that younger mind, constantly. And I mean, there's scientific ways to like approach the memorization of how to like lock things in long term, and what you're going to do with short term. And the best thing is that as soon as you get something that you need to memorize, read it right away. Don't wait too long, because the longer you wait, the more it gives your brain a chance to basically disassociate yourself from it. So if like you get an email and you need to like remember something from there, it's best to just read it right then and there, because the longer you procrastinate, the more your brain is kind of drifting away from it. So that you're going to have all this time in between, and that you have to learn this. So then when you go back to finally start learning it, now you've got to close that gap again, between the distance of when you knew you should have had it and to that point where it's kind of gotten away from you. So it becomes very, very difficult because that there's a timeline to this. That at the end of 2 weeks from now, I'm going to have to perform this.
Yeah.
So it's best to learn it as soon as possible, get it in there, understand it, and then use the rest of the time to just kind of say it in your sleep. That's one of the things too, is a lot of sleep. A lot of sleep is helps with memorization. And I, again, like the wonderment of being a child, like it just all of that. Don't ever grow up. That's, I think, the key is to just, don't allow yourself to grow up. Do grown up things, but do them in a way where, you're almost like childlike when you're doing them. It's when I show my kids like how to do something, they're so interested and they just want to do it perfect. And so they'll do it over and over and over again until they get it right. And that's really amazing, because oftentimes now we're not learning in a way where we pick it up as best as we could be, so it's an interesting question, because I don't know. I think we all kind of grew up, and that's no good.
Well, the thing is, you said it yourself, your parents would pound into your head, when are you going to grow up? It equates growing up with a certain amount of seriousness, and it treats your childhood interests as being frivolous or not to be taken seriously, when a lot of really smart people would tell you that what you did and enjoyed in your childhood is your true essence, right?
Absolutely.
It's the real you. And it's like, if you're dissatisfied now, you've reached this point in your life where you're just not fulfilled or not happy, and you don't know what to do about it, a lot of times the clues are to be found in just that, what you used to lose yourself in as a kid. But we're not taught to take that seriously. It's kid stuff, right? It's kid stuff. But how many of the answers are to be found there? If you just go looking for them, right?
Yeah. Lose your mind now and create a new one by reverting back to when you were a kid. And just try to remember what it was like. Because you're right. Everything that is you today has some sort of essence from when you were a child. Like, it's so true, because I remember, being a writer when I was a kid. I was, doing the young author stuff. And I remember I was such a reader all the time. I mean, the same things that interest me then, it still interests me now, which is so funny. It's so funny. Like, there's nothing that I was doing as a kid that like doesn't, that I'm still like, that I'm not into anymore. It's,
Yeah.
I'm into it all right now. It's the best.
What's really, I wish, just in this moment, I wish this was actually a video podcast. It isn't, it's audio. But I'm going to tell the audience the way your demeanor has changed in the past 5 minutes. The look that's come across your face as you talk about this childhood stuff. It's a complete, not that you were looking fierce before or anything, but it's just so obvious. It's transformative to put yourself in that place. And I'm watching it come through in your demeanor. And if it's that visible on the outside, what's it like on the inside, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, there's a flood of emotions that are like coming over me. Like, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. And we lose touch with that because the culture teaches you to lose touch with that. And so you become a musician, and then you talk about how seriously you took it and how seriously you took yourself and what an ego thing that became. And I've had the same experience. And of course you did, because that was the message passed down to you. Grow up, be more serious, grind, work. And the work is great. I love this quote that says, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I love that because it's like people, especially people my age, are so fixated now on retirement, Yeah. I'm 15 years away. I'm 15 years away. And it's like, I don't want to retire at all. I want to do what it is I love until the day I freaking drop. And then I don't get the point of life otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of my favorite.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one of my favorite quotes, because you mentioned that one. One of my favorite quotes was, we don't have a soul. We are a soul. We just have a body.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because it goes into that whole, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
And so all of this stuff that we take so seriously, that's the surface level stuff. That's the stuff that we need to do in order to survive, in order to be part of the species. But the magic and the stuff that gets created out of thin air, and ideas that get passed into us, and then from internally, we use our brains or we use our hands to create something and put it back into the world and make it real, from nothing.
Right.
Or from energy, essentially from energy, like thoughts are energy, emotion, everything. It's all energy. So it's able to, like, our bodies and our vessels here, on this earth, like, we are able to use them to create. We should be doing more of that. But I understand that there's this paradox where, you have to do this in order to do that. And how else are you supposed to live? So I get it that there's that aspect. But again, we get stuck in this survival mode, in this surface living, where it's like, we feel like that becomes the highest precedent. Like we have to do that in order to be able to have our fun. But, if you can somehow turn your fun into what it is you do to survive and make money, then I think you're doing it right.
So they don't teach us that that's the possibility. It's right. Like I've said before, the children of celebrities don't tend to become 9-to-5ers.
Right.
The children of actors tend to become performers and whatever, the children of athletes, whatever, because their frame of reference is, that's what you do with life. This is possible, right? And so they don't become 9-to-5 office people. And it's all frame of reference, but it's, again, it just gets pounded into your head that trying to live a creative life that way is frivolous or not possible. And the people who put that into your head, in a lot of cases, are very well intentioned. Your parents don't want you to starve.
That's it.
And so they come at you with this practical reality, and there has to be a practical element to it. I mean, you are an actor, writer, musician, and you do not do this frivolously. You do it in an open way, but in a very practical way. This is still a business. This is still the business of your life and your family, and you treat it seriously and you do it in a practical way. But why shouldn't playfulness be your life? Why shouldn't that be at least a part of it,
Yeah. It's one of those things where if you take it too seriously, it will kill you. Like, it is one of those things where, you have to have a lot of patience and determination, perseverance, and if you can't do it with a smile and you're taking it too seriously, when things don't go your way, like, you tend to be down about it. And then all of a sudden opportunity gets squandered because you weren't ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's real. It's real. All of this is connected. It's all connected somehow. So,
and you become one of the problems that I've had to face, particularly in music and in other ways, is being attached to this identity, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm a drummer or whatever, and you attach to this drummer, or you attach to being the drummer for this particular artist. And we know how fragile that can be. And that's an ego thing, to be attached to this identity. And that's when you begin to take things too seriously, because it's an ego thing. And I don't want this identity compromised. And that sucks so much of the potential out of it and the joy out of anything in your life when you become attached to the identity of whatever it is that you're doing. Huge trap for me. I've spent the last 10 years, wrestling with that trap as a musician.
Oh, yeah.
In therapy, the whole thing. But it's like when you begin to recognize how this operates, then you begin to, and that's a mindfulness thing too, becoming aware of your attachments to identities, Absolutely. Becoming aware of why you're taking something so seriously, and is that a good thing or a bad thing, It's such an interesting game when you begin to open it up that way,
Absolutely. I think that, the people that have left me, have made me a better person. And, the people that I've met that have come into my life for the better have made me a better person. And the people that I'll meet tomorrow, or in the future, will no doubt make me a better person. And it's that whole element where, taking things too seriously, just learning to shake it all off, and understanding that, a proper process in place is going to, help you get to where you need to be, which is great. That's always been, I think, one of the things that walking away from sales, that always stuck with me, understanding a process, but being able to, not take yourself too seriously has definitely been one of the saving graces for me. So, and I know that like when I say people who left me, it was a lot of it probably had to do with, me, being someone who took myself too seriously, so that's one of the things that I say. That's why I say that it made me a better person, even though I was mad at the time, and whatever, it's like, I've learned to let it go, forgive and forget, and just be, because I'm not them.
The anger is a clue though, man. Like when I'm a side player. I've been let go from acts, or I've had things fall apart, and can be extraordinarily painful, but so instructive. You can learn so much about yourself by these negative reactions to things, right?
Yeah.
Everything is a learning opportunity.
Yeah. I always thought that, failures, used to shy away from failure all the time. Hated failing. But the more you fail, the more lessons you're learning. If you can't walk away from failure without learning something, then you're doing it wrong.
It's wasted then, right? You've wasted your failure,
Yeah, absolutely. And you're just letting it win and defeat you. And then again, you drift into this fear and resistance world. I mean, the more you're failing, the more you're probably walking through those doors of resistance, which is a good thing.
Oh yeah.
Because those opportunities, they don't wait for somebody who's playing it safe.
No, they really don't. And the more you fail, the more you become to a certain extent, desensitized to failing, right?
Absolutely.
And that makes it easy to go for anything. You can move up the levels in terms of what's intimidating for you if you don't fear failure anymore. It's like, if you want to take this to the highest level, the way to enjoy life is to lose your fear of death. like that's deep Buddhism right there, man. And
I love it.
I just find, I mean, I haven't absorbed all these lessons, but I'm becoming aware of them at least. It's the first step on the road, first step.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned so much about the self-awareness piece and the, mindfulness. It's like, this is where it's at. Like, it's where it's gotta be. Being self-aware is all of it. I don't think you can function on that level of, success and like where you're going without having some self-awareness. It's so important to be able to identify those kinks in your armor and, and figuring it all out.
And it's so easy when you're not self-aware to just deflect or put blame on other people, without owning your part in things.
Right.
It's like, you can own your part in what's good, and that's fine. But if you don't own your part in what's bad, then you're not really getting the whole picture, right? Like, I've had to go through this too, Well, I've lost gigs, or when things haven't gone the way I wanted them to. It's like very easy to make that somebody else's fault or somebody else's problem. But ultimately, I have a part to play in that. And even bigger is the part I play in reacting to those circumstances, right? So you might get screwed by somebody. You might genuinely be innocent, but it's like you still have to own your reaction to that circumstance. And that is a self-awareness thing. It's like, why do I feel this way right now? I feel really bad. I feel angry, depressed, anxiety, whatever. It's like this self-awareness begins when you begin to inquire into those feelings. Why do I feel this way? And then it's like a thread spool. It's just unspools. You're like, oh, wow. And therapy's a great help for that, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking to somebody who can actually help you uncoil those things. But you become self-aware, and then you're like, okay, this behavior is a product of this belief or this past experience or what I've lost from my childhood that I need to pick up again. And life changes because you begin to bring this knowledge into your interactions with people, right? And it changes the way you have fewer bad situations because you become aware of what triggers you in those situations, who to avoid and why. It changes everything. I've had that experience too.
Yeah.
So tell me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. You were heading somewhere profound. I can tell.
I was nope. I was not.
You're just going to agree with me.
Yeah.
We're getting near time here, and I want to ask you a couple of things. Tell us about this new film that just premiered that you're in.
Oh yeah. So it's called Switched at Death. And back in 2018, it won several awards for screenwriting and, funniest film, best writing, all this stuff. And they were able to get some backing and some funding to make a full feature. And, living where I live and the auditions being held at the top floor of the Hudson Bay building, I guess, at the time in Toronto, I couldn't make it. But I had memorized the character, this particular character's monologue. And, I sent in an audition tape, and then they were like, yeah, we're holding second auditions at this building. We'd love for you to come out and try it out. And I was like, oh man, I can't make it. I was like, okay, well, no problem. See ya. And I was like, woo, like that can't be the end of this. Like, it can't be the end of this. So I did another one of like another audition video self-tape, and I sent it to them during that day. And I said, please, like, here's the tape, get me, on a Zoom. I'll do it again, in front of you guys. And they're like, we're running out of time, and, we're not going to have much time to do any Zoom stuff today. We've got a room full of people waiting to get in. And so I sent them the tape, and they laughed, and, they said, okay, you're hired. So I got the job just by, sheer force. I was pushing, wouldn't take no for an answer sort of thing. I was supposed to playing a mobster, a Croatian mob guy who is defected to Canada to run a nursing home, like a retirement home. And he's laundering money. People are dying in there, and he's bringing in war criminals and stuff to live under false identities there. And there's an IT kid who gets kicked out of his house all the while, right? The star of the film gets kicked out of his house and, goes to live with his wife, Nona, at the retirement home. And, so because he's in cybersecurity, he's able to figure out that there's some fishy stuff going on in the paper trails in this place. And so then they end up traveling to Croatia to catch up with this guy and figure out who's behind all this. The movie's called Switched at Death. It's a comedy. Best way to explain it is it reminds me of Weekend at Bernie's meets Crazy People. It's totally like an 80s throwback, with great music and all, and just a really funny gags, funny jokes. And we had the premiere at the Royal Theatre on College in Toronto a couple of weeks ago. And I wore a tuxedo jacket with a Beetlejuice shirt. And
you did.
And I just had the greatest time there, reconnecting with this cast. It was a cast of about 100 and something people. And I was on the call sheet. I probably would have been number 5, which is pretty high up there. So it was nice. I was a principal lead, but co-starring, and so I had a lot of role. I had a lot of beef to my role and a lot of stuff going on for me in the movie, which was really, really nice and a great opportunity to showcase my roots of, Eastern European accent.
Of course.
And that was a lot of fun. And just, it was a great film. Really, really funny stuff. And a few people in there that have shown up several places, on different commercials and different shows and whatnot. So it's that was that one. And then the one before that was a small short film that I did with Suk-In Lee.
With Suk-In,
Much Music. And so we played 2 restaurant owners. She's a chef, and I was the manager of this beautiful restaurant that is being sold to basically the highest bidder, and they don't want Suk-Yen's character to be affiliated with it. So she makes a meal to try and win them over. And the movie's very Stephen King-ish. It's a very, it's very, very cool. Very, very cool. And we saw that the week before that at the Royal as well. And that one to me was just something so bizarre. I can't wait because the makers of that film, they're doing a lot of really, really great stuff, and they're putting out some really, really great stuff. So I firmly believe that as a short film, that's going to kind of get some mileage. And I just can't wait till I get to actually share it around, because both of them actually, your worst fear, especially as a new actor, it's your worst fear is that when you watch something, it comes back as cringy, and
right, sure.
And your performance is cringy and whatnot. But no, it to my surprise, I'm here to stay.
So could Al Yeti Bones of 5 years ago have projected forward and seen all of this happening?
No. But I think he wouldn't have been surprised, just because of, there's some ideas there that you want to manifest. And, I wouldn't have been surprised. Yeah. I don't know where things are going to take me next, but, again, I think in 5 years from now, I won't be surprised.
Oh, interesting. I was going to ask you where you see yourself going from here, or are you just staying where you are right now? Just keeping it here now for the moment.
I think that if I have goals, those goals are I want to do something that's going to show up on Netflix, and
Cool.
I want to be on network television as well. There's something that I want to do that's going to be on network television. And those are two of the goals like the immediate goals that I want to kind of accomplish this year. So,
Okay.
yeah, nothing too big, but 5 years ago that would have been huge. So
this is what happens, right? This is how the perception changes. Once you begin to move up the levels, it's like things become ordinary. Like 10 years ago, I had just come back into music after being not in music for a long time. And I'm playing a club show for 30 people. And I'm like, whew.
Yeah.
And then you just sort of become the sort of person who can, and then I can play in front of thousands of people now and just totally fine. It just becomes, okay, yeah, of course we'll do that. No big deal. Of course we'll be on Netflix and we'll be on, you become the sort of person who can do that because it becomes your frame of reference for life, right? It's a really fun process.
It is. I mean, walking through that door, walking through those doors, that's essentially it. It's like not allowing fear and resistance to rule your world. So I would have thought, how could I have done that? How could I do that? There's just no way. Well, I mean, yeah, there's no way. If you believe it, there's no way, of course.
Well, the other thing is that people sometimes don't see the steps.
Right.
They see the end result. So like they go to see Guns N' Roses play in front of 40,000 people and they're like, I could never do that. Well, no, you couldn't, but you could play in front of 20 and that's where you start. Yeah. And same thing with acting, I can't do a feature film, but not yet. You can do a commercial though.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then you climb up the ladder. You become the person in the process of doing it, right? That's an intimidating thing too. I've been in the past. I was a fiction writer for a long time. That was my game. It's like, I can't write a novel. Well, perhaps not, but you can write a short story or a poem and then step up until you get there.
Yeah.
People need to remember to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
not start at the end,
That's
right? And speaking of the end, we have pretty much reached it, man. It's such a great pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. I was so happy to get to do this today.
I'm glad because I as I said, I've watched your transformation happen and I'm always fascinated by it. And I appreciate what you post on Facebook. You are, as I said, a really positive presence there. And I think the world needs that. The world needs another point of view on things, And so thank you for providing that.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
I really do. Like I try to be positive talk on this program and I get into some of the weird esoteric energy, spirituality stuff. I feel really uncomfortable talking about it. I struggle sometimes with that end of what I do here. And so it's nice to see other people speaking with confidence about the positive side of things.
Yeah. Well, we're all listening. So it's, that's the best thing. Keep doing it. It's great. It's
Thank
great.
You. Thank you. I appreciate
that cycle,
Yeah, of course. And it, attachments, ego, the whole thing.
Love it.
But we will be watching you absolutely as you continue to grow. And man, congratulations, first of all, on the steps you've taken and the success you've achieved.
Thank you.
And we wish you the best of luck moving forward, man. We'll be cheering for you.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. So we're gonna hang up, but stay on the line.
Okay.
We have some afters to discuss.
Okay.
And for our purposes now, though, here on the podcast, please say goodbye, Alex Yeti Petrovich.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
See ya.
Got nothing to add this time. Come back next week for the big 50th birthday episode.